Hello and welcome back to Rare Reads, and today I am going to be talking about this book, Richard Blandford, My Life in Orbit. So I stumbled across this book on Instagram. I saw some ads for it on Instagram. It came out actually last year, but I've only come across it just recently. And so I thought it looked interesting from the Instagram promos that Richard was doing. I checked out some of his other titles as well. Some of which I think are pretty out there in terms of really a riot and really like funny. So I think he's done a couple of books that are, there's one called Hound Dog, and I can't remember the title of the other one, where it's this Elvis impersonator, and they sound absolutely bloody bonkers. And I was a bit, because he's written quite a lot of books, I don't know how I've not come across him before. So I was a bit torn over what to start with. So I went with this one mainly because it's like the one that he's obviously kind of pushing and promoting at the minute. And I thought, well, you know, if I can help that a bit with the channel. And bless him as well, he followed me back on the socials, which I always think is a really lovely thing for writers to do. And hopefully you might check this out as well. Hello, Richard, if you're watching. So I was expecting, the first thing to say is about this is, it's brilliant, by the way. I'm going to give this an absolutely tier 4 review. But it's not what I was expecting. So I was expecting something that was going to be laugh out loud and sort of, bonkers kind of thing. And it isn't that at all. That's not to say there's no humour. It has humour, definitely. The characters have a sense of humour, and there is a sense of humour that comes through. But it is actually a book about, the narrator is autistic, and it's how they experience the world, how he experiences the world. And I have never read a book before that so accurately portrays that experience of being autistic and trying to function in a world that isn't always tailored to, neurodiverse brains. And I honestly, felt like there were bits in this book where I felt like somebody's seen inside, Richard Blandford has seen inside my head, and he's literally articulating things that I've never been able to actually articulate myself in terms of how I experience the world as somebody who has autism. I probably haven't read anywhere near enough books that are from that perspective, mainly because I just, I don't know where those books are. I don't know what those books are. Obviously, I've read The Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, obviously, which I think is a great book. But for me, it's a bit kiddyish, that. This is very much, an adult book, not in that sense, not in a sexual sense. But yeah, I found, with that one, it's great that it got such, exposure, and that it got such kind of, it got to be so popular and such a big, well-known book and everything. That is great. And I think what it did probably for raising awareness about autism, absolutely great. But it's not one of my favourite books or anything like that. And I've read there's 2 books by Donna somebody. I can't remember what I want to say Donna Summer, but I don't mean Donna Summer. Nobody Nowhere, Somebody Somewhere are non-fiction books about kind of, the autistic experience. And they are worth checking out. But I'm not the biggest fan of non-fiction. So please comment me if you want to tell me any, books from autistic perspective that you think I should check out. So let's talk about then first how he pulls off then this autistic. And by the way, a thing that I really love about this is he never explicitly says, I have, this main character, it's narrated from his point of view, never explicitly says, I have autism. And I do like that about it. It is about how somebody with autism experiences the world, but it isn't just about them struggling with autism, or, that's not what it is. But the way that he describes certain things, so the orbit in the title, so what this is there's this, he lives in this town, and he obviously feels a bit sort of detached from the other people that live there. But there's a group, him and a group of his fellow orbiters, who are constantly just orbiting around the kind of, you get the sense they're outsiders, they're on the fringes of things. And that is very much how it feels for me a lot of the time, being autistic. So I really liked that as a just extended metaphor and an allegory, if you like, that runs throughout the whole book. I thought that was like a really nice way of kind of, demonstrating that. Then there's a bit where he's talking about, he kind of goes back into flashbacks a lot in this book and goes back to childhood. So there's a bit where he's talking about being at school the first time, his first kind of experiences at school, and how he experiences that. And and the way he describes the other kids, and it's like he describes it like all of the others are this big machine, and so their body parts and things are levers, and he's got to try and figure out which levers to pull and which ones not to pull and when to pull them in order to be able to work this machine or work within this machine, or to be a part of it, kind of thing, which he sadly kind of never does. So I thought that was another like just really clever kind of bit of metaphor for what it can feel like. And myself, kind of growing up and not knowing I had autism, that was something that I always really struggled with, in terms of those kind of unwritten rules and things of sort of he's fine while he's in the classroom, he's fine with the teachers and things like that, but it's when it comes to those free times, those social times, that can be so difficult for someone with autism. So I really loved the way that he described that. I also love the name that one of his sort of friends, associates, fellow orbiters gives him, which is Fantasticus Autisticus. I don't think we ever, get his, my apologies to Richard if I've missed that, I don't think we ever got his actual name. And I suppose he's playing around there, isn't he, with the, kind of his lack of kind of, self-confidence and self-esteem sort of thing. The fact that, we don't know his real name, just this kind of, his autism is his name kind of thing. Right, I'm doing a little insert here because it's just occurred to me that I seem to read a lot of, recently I've read a lot of books with characters that don't have names. Like some of Drew's stories don't have names, and The Woman in Audition that I just reviewed recently doesn't have a name. And it just reminded me of like, why am I drawn to those kind of things? I don't know, maybe it's something to do with identity or something, or not having a very strong identity, not being sure of yourself, I don't know. But it just reminded me of like a bit of a discussion that I had about this when I was at uni with Barbara Henderson. What a great literary mind Barbara is. Hello, Barbara. I'm sure she's not watching, but yeah, we had a bit of a discussion about. She feels quite strongly about. She doesn't like that. She doesn't like it when you don't name your characters. Because I think I wrote a short story when I was at uni. Called The Girl Who Chased the Wind, and I didn't name my character, and I think she really didn't like that, but I stuck to it anyway. That was just a little musing on unnamed characters. The book is about this guy, and he's going to meet his daughter. He's found out that he has this kind of daughter who's been estranged from. He didn't even know he had a daughter, and so he's going to meet her later on. And so it's all set over one day, which I really like it when I love novels that are structured like that. But what we get is lots and lots of him ruminating on the past, reflecting on the past and going back into flashbacks. But it actually is just over one day. So another thing that I really liked is there are points in this book where he feels like he should act. Something will have happened to somebody and he should act, he should take action, and he just is unable to do that. And I find myself in this situation quite a lot. So it'll be like a social situation where he isn't au fait with all of the social norms and the social etiquette and whatever. So I really like that, because I found myself in that situation like so many times. And that's why there's this whole myth, isn't there, about people with autism, that, we have no empathy. It's not that we have no empathy. It's just that sometimes we don't know how to show, how we feel about something. But it isn't that we don't have empathy. That is an absolute, myth. It will just sometimes come across that way. I also really liked his relationship with his mother. So he has a really lovely relationship with his mum, who he refers to as Laurie throughout this book. And I'll tell you what this reminded me a bit of, this relationship. And this is a book, I don't know how I've not mentioned this book on this channel so far, because that's such a brilliant book, and it's one of my favourite books that I've read in recent times. It reminded me of Shuggie Bain, and I know kind of in Shuggie Bain the relationship with his mum is much more strained kind of thing. This is not like that. This is not kind of a negligent mother or anything like that. She absolutely is doing her best for him all the time, and it is thanks to his mother that he ends up going to university, and it's at university where he kind of finds himself a little bit sort of thing. You get the sense that this is somewhere where he maybe does sort of feel more at home there than he has done, you know, kind of previously, and like especially at school. So it's his mum that's encouraged him to go to university, and his mum, he finds out once he gets there, he finds out that she'd been saving all these years, you know, so that he can, you know, so he's got a little nest egg kind of thing, you know, that supports him while he's at university. So this is where it gets weird though. So this is not a conventional book at all. And I think that some people, if they pick it up thinking, I'm getting, you know, a book about somebody that's got autism, it could well throw you in the first few pages. And I'll kind of explain why. So the book starts out and he's talking about Atom Comics, and he's talking about specific comic books in this Atom Comics universe. There are comic book shops in the town where he lives. This is one of the places where him and the Orbiters kind of hang out. And he is very much obsessed with these comics and has kind of a photographic memory of them, kind of issue by issue kind of thing. So this is very much his subject of interest. You know, we as autistic people, we have our obsessions, yeah, as do lots of other people as well, of course. But that is very much his kind of, you know, his obsessive, you know, passion. And his mum discovers this university course that is linked to one of the comics in this comic book universe that she kind of recognises and knows that he's interested in. And that's how he ends up getting into university, because they will pretty much just take anybody on this course because it's such an obscure course. So there is a lot of, in this book, stuff about these comic books and this university course that he's signed on to, and that he does very well on, and that he ends up actually teaching on this university course as well. So when he goes into these sections where he's describing, you know, being at university and being on this course, he's talking about this thing called vibratism or vibratism. I'm not actually sure how you're supposed to say that. This is an actual thing, and he's talking about different realities. So there's a thing, you know, around sort of parallel existences, parallel universes. So it does get a bit sci-fi, and that's obviously from the comics. But this vibratism, vibratism, however you're supposed to say it. So he talks about this guy called Mikaja Kulp and this book that he wrote called At Gabriel's Command in the 1800s. And he's talking about this cult that he led, this vibratist kind of cult. And so there were suspicions amongst his peers on this university course that there's something a little bit suspect about this kind of university course, and the fact that, you know, how is it that this course is running year after year after year? Everybody drops out of this course, you know, how is it being funded? So it feels a bit like conspiratorial, a bit like, you know, there's these conspiracy theories kind of thing. There is very much two plot lines in there. You have got his life and his relationships, and then you've also got this whole thing around this kind of science fiction comic book mysticism and kind of, you know, and vibratism and these different realities kind of thing. And you get the sense that maybe he's maybe wishing that he could live in a different reality where he is accepted more, or where, you know, where maybe autism is the norm, and, you know, the people that are typically brained are the exception kind of thing. So he's doing some quite clever things, I think, there in terms of these kind of, you know, parallels that he's drawing with autism, and, you know, other things that he's playing around, themes and things that he's playing around with in the book. The other thing I need to mention in terms of it's very much postmodern book. It's, you know, the sort of stuff I love, this when it's kind of quite meta. And there was bits where I did keep going and Googling and trying to find out, you know, there's a comic he calls Radio Girl, and I was trying to find out, is that a real thing? I was trying to find out, is Atom Comics a real thing? There's illustrators and things that he mentions. I was like, is this a real person? The Mikaja Kulp as well. I was like, you know, is that real? Bits of it is, and most of it isn't, though. And I think what a brain on this guy, Richard Branford, to have come up with this. You know, the world building is like amazing. But he also has, in terms of this kind of meta thing, he has quite a lengthy quote from Walt Whitman from Leaves of Grass here. I love Walt Whitman. And this very famous quote, I contain multitudes, that he uses and that he refers back to again and again throughout the book, and I loved the use of that. I thought it was a really beautiful use of that beautiful quote. So it's a great book. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved that it was meta. I loved and there was this science fiction kind of side to it that's quite nerdy. I think nerds would absolutely, autistic nerds, get reading this. You'll love it, right? But also it very much does have a heart and a soul, and it's very moving in places. And I tell you what I really love about it. So yeah, there's this thing where it's just set over one day. So at the end, he does go and actually meet his daughter. He does go into this cafe to meet his daughter. But you don't really get this meeting with him and the daughter. It very much is kind of cuts off just as they're going to meet. And I love that. I love that he doesn't go all, I hate anything that's too sentimental or mawkish kind of thing. I really don't like anything like that. And he doesn't get into all of that. I loved the way that his daughter was conceived. I'm not going to spoil this for you, but oh my God, no clue that it was going to go here, where his daughter actually came from and how he happened to conceive this child. I really, really did not see this coming. And it's such an unusual kind of setup, which I loved that about it. I'm not going to spoil that because I think, it came out of the blue for me, and I liked the fact that that was so surprising. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. I would recommend it to anybody, especially though if you are neurodivergent yourself, because I think it just does such a good job of kind of encapsulating how that sometimes can feel, and the alienation of that, which I personally myself feel a lot, and just it just made me feel connected to something while I was reading it, and that's just a dream for me. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. Richard Bramford, My Life in Orbit, cracking read. Check it out, because it's not not got many reviews on Amazon or anything like that. I don't think it's sold that well, and it definitely deserves to have done more than it has. Just before I go, an announcement. So I have secured an interview with Drew Gummerson. Drew Gummerson, for some reason, God knows why, has agreed to let me interview him for the channel. So next weekend I'm going to go and meet up with him, and we're going to do some filming, and we're going to do an interview, and we will be talking through his 4 books and other stuff that he's written as well, because he's written a lot. So please, right, so I've put a call out on Instagram, I've put a call out on Substack as well, and we've got nothing come back. We would like some more questions. Obviously I've got questions to ask him. I've got lots and lots of questions to ask him, but it would be great to also get some questions from his other readers and fans, who I know he does have other readers and fans. I'd love to find them, because I'd love to build, a community. So yeah, if you are a fan of Drew, please do drop comments. In the comments, drop your questions that you'd like me to ask him, and that I will do my very best to put those questions to him and get you some answers. Okay, I'm going to escape inside, find some shade, and do some editing now with a fan on. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please. And I will catch you next time. Keep reading and take care.